All right, welcome back to TEW Impact. I believe this is June week 3. I'm probably wrong. I'm doing it from memory. It has been at least a week, probably a week and a half, since I last recorded. And I've actually had the show booked and ready to go for some time, but just last week, just I don't know, I've just been lazy. This week I took off the whole week of work for Thanksgiving, but I had a bunch of appointments and stuff to get done earlier in the week. Um, and just been feeling lazy. Um, but I figured now if I wasn't gonna record, should record now. I got one of those bumpy, hurty things on my tongue, and one of my uh, wisdom teeth is kind of sore, but we're doing it anyway. We're doing it. I'm sure I'm probably going to forget things, considering I've had this booked and ready to go for so long. But let's get into it. We got the numbers of last week's show. For the Impact TV rating, 0.01 as usual. Overall rating 29, no change from the previous week. Um, Impact rating a 0.28. I don't know why I didn't put the change, but I believe it was an increase due to uh the arrival of Samoa Joe, which I'll get into in a bit. And then overall rating a 44, up from 39 the previous week, and makes our second best Impact so far. And attendance is 357, up from 354. So three more people have showed up. Um, yeah. Before I get further into the news, let me just mention, of course, the big news of last week coming out of Impact last week was Samoa Joe is back in Impact. Despite being an employee, well, WWE doesn't have employees, but despite being uh, contracted to WWE, or rather NXT, despite being their champion, despite being the 24/7 champion. Um, how we were managed to get that was because Joe is one of the few people not on an exclusive contract for WWE or NXT. Um, he I think he has a written deal, but it's not exclusive because I know he also works PWG. Um, and also Scott Demore, who made his return last week. And also under the employ of WWE and technically us. Also, I think he has a handshake deal, so he definitely doesn't have an exclusive deal, despite being the head booker of NXT. The last couple of shows where I mentioned that we had to break our relationships, particularly with NXT, particularly the agreement not to sign people from each other. That was why, because I wanted to get Samoa Joe for Slammiversary. So, like I said, that might come to bite us in the ass later on. Um, Considering that also leaves us open for pretty much WWE, well, WWE and NXT to basically take what they want. I think we still have an agreement with NXT UK, not to sign from each other, but there's not really any point in breaking that. Um, as far as how long we have Samoa Joe, basically, I basically have him. I signed him to a month deal, so that will put him through to Slammiversary. I think that might put him like a week after, but we're definitely going to have him. I shouldn't say definitely because plans will change, but we should definitely have him for Slammiversary, unless WWE decides to really dick us over and sign him to an exclusive deal out of nowhere. I did check, and it seems that um, well, I'll actually get into it later because it'll come up. But Samoa Joe's schedule in the future. But before that, let's go to Impact News. Ty Valkyrie has officially retired from in-ring competition. She's still under contract with us, and she can still act as a manager. But I don't know if we're really going to use her, and I don't remember how long we really have left on her contract. I think it's still a handshake, so it doesn't really matter. But maybe we will put her somewhere. But I think she's only available as a manager, so it's not like I can use her as a road agent, which would be nice. But yeah. So Ty Valkyrie officially retired. Joe Doring suffered a strained rotator cuff on last week's Impact. But he has fully healed. Um, he is fully healed as of today, technically Thursday, as I start Impact. I did mention the this week and next week's Impact. He is supposedly unavailable due to All Japan bookings, but when I booked this week's Impact, he was available. So that would have been nice to know, but we're erring on the side of caution, and we technically wrote him off until Slammiversary. So unless something happens and he's available next week, maybe he'll pop up next week, but I'm not counting on it. I'm not going to plan on it. But Joe Doring is in the clear. He's only injured for a week, so he's all good to go. Rosemary has accepted a contract extension to her handshake deal. Um, I've been thinking about contracts lately. I really probably should have signed Rosemary to a written. If we're going to make her kind of the one of at least one of the pillars of our women's division, but I didn't think about it, so whatever. That's something to keep in mind for later. Speaking of contracts, this is the last month on both Dot Gallows and Raven's contracts. Um, Not sure if I'm going to keep Raven. Like I said, I probably could use him as a road agent, but he is somewhat costly. Dot Gallows. Um, I've been trying to negotiate with him, and the next bit kind of has messed with that. NWA has extended contract offers to Dot Gallows and Damian O'Connor um, for handshake deals. Normally, I wouldn't really consider that a big deal because I believe like we have Mickey James is working there, Homicide still works there, Nick Aldis still works there, even though we, don't really use him. So we have people working there on handshake deals, so it wouldn't be a big deal if they were to accept. But when I went to renegotiate for Dot Gallows' contract, um, the fact that NWA gave him an offer, um, was really messing with the negotiations, even though it's really almost the same as our contract. Like I think down to the price tag. Um, but the fact that he's saying like, "Oh, NWA is offering me a contract, which is a handshake deal for the same amount I'm already making," um, needs is is he's playing hardball on that to, I guess, get a bigger contract. I don't know how that works, or how that makes sense. You could just work both. I don't really care. Um, but again, that's probably something I'll have to figure out soon. And then something I was messing with, I don't know if this is gonna impact us at all. I was playing with our like trying to understand like our global coverage, like our overall coverage via like TV or whatever. So what I did was I increased the coverage of Impact Plus to tiny status in India. I figure um maybe that would like boost us a little bit. That would kind of keep if we had, if we managed to keep like Raj Singh and Shera and maybe bring in more Indian talent, maybe that would help us. Um but the fact that I guess that since they we went from zero to tiny status or coverage for India, but I think the fact that we're a small, if I understand correctly, the fact that we're a small company but with tiny status results in like an overall loss in money. So even if we get more subscriptions, like results in a $2,000 loss in subscriptions. I think monthly. So that's not huge, but of something I would rather not have to do if I knew better, which I don't. So yeah. Uh, Again, just little things I'm trying to figure out as far as the game works. I just come at this from the booking side. The business side doesn't really matter to me as long as we're making money. So, which we are, but we're not making tons. So, a $2,000 loss monthly, if I remember correctly anyway, might hurt us considering we're not making tons of money monthly, but whatever. All right, let's go to American news. WWE NXT. As far as contract renewals, we got Nash Carter, James Long, and James Drake have extended their exclusive written deals, and then Samoa Joe signed to a one-night deal with WWE to defend the 24/7 title against Rick Boogs on SmackDown, successfully, might I add. Um, this is what I was alluding to earlier, where Samoa Joe, since he's also the 24/7 title holder, what happens is sometimes WWE will sign him to one night deals to show up on a pay per view or a show or whatever. Um, I was afraid that that would interfere with his ability to show up on Slammiversary or even future episodes of Impact, but as far as his schedule looks, it looks like Thursdays and the Saturday of Slammiversary is free. So fingers crossed we shouldn't have any interference. I know he had once um, signed to NXT, or I think a couple times to show up on their takeovers to defend the 24/7 title. Um, so yeah, I was kind of afraid that WWE would pull something dickish and interfere in our plans, but unless he signs like an exclusive deal at the last second, hopefully we should be good. AEW, Lance Archer has left. His contract has run out and not renewed. Needless to say, I am very, very interested in picking him up. So, I think he will be good for our main event level. So, I haven't started negotiations yet, but I would not be surprised if he shows up on Impact sooner rather than later. And then Ty Conti and Robo the Punjabi Lion have started dating. I can't remember his name. I want to say he was the guy. He was the random guy in the Hardy family office who wasn't Private Party or the Butcher and the Blade. He was just like I think he was just the one guy who just kind of stood around. He had some tags with Matt every once in a while. I can't remember his name. I think that's who Robo the Punjabi Lion is, but that's how the game has him. So that's what I wrote down. Uh, New Japan strong. They increased their production values to professional. NWA have risen to small size. And they've increased a lot of their production. They've increased production values to semi-pro, broadcast quality is semi-pro, music to local, and live event experience to small. And they have hired Babatunde Ayegbusi, if I pronounce that correctly, formerly known as Commander Aziz, to a handshake deal. So that kind of explains NWA's uh, contract offers to Doc Gallows and Damian O'Connor that I mentioned earlier. So they are rising. And also, Matt Cross suffered a sprained ACL on NWA Power against Mecha Wolf. He'll only be out for a few weeks. GCW, Drew Parker, put in his month notice. So he will only be appearing them for the next month. And then AAW have also risen to small size. Japan news. New Japan, former uh, loanee, I guess, David Finley Jr. extended his exclusive written deal with New Japan, and just in time because Finjuice and Ryusuke, I spelled that wrong, Taguchi, I think I also spelled that wrong, defeated Evil, Sho, and Yujiro Takahashi for the never open weight six-man titles at the Best of the Super Juniors. DDT, they had their Wrestle Peter Pan event, and that had a lot of title changes. Dan Shokudino won the Universal title his first reign by defeating Yuji Okabayashi. El Lindaman and Keisuke Ishii defeated Hiroshima and Naomi Yoshimura to win the KOD tag team titles. Um, my memory is foggy, but I believe El Lindaman and Hiroshima. I think El Lindaman lost a singles title to Hiroshima a few weeks back. A DDT title. That was the month where or the week where he won a title somewhere else and then lost one. I think he lost one to Hiroshima, so there's some history there. Uh, Masahiro Takanishi defeated Soma Tako for the 040 championship. And then in Stardom, Lioness Asuka and Lulu Pencil joined on handshake deals. I believe Lioness Asuka is retired. I think when I looked her up, she was only available as like a road agent or a ref. So don't expect her to wrestle. Um, Retirements. Not a lot of retirements announced. The only announced retirement this week was Chris Hamrick, which in real life, as I'm recording this, came a few days after his GCW mistake. um, yeah, less said about that, the better. Official retirements. Retirements going into effect. Ricky Steamboat, Brian Lee, Brian Fury, Bill Behrens, Rob Feinstein, Dave Wills, the It's Still Real Lumengi guy, Ty Valkyrie, which I mentioned earlier, Greg Valentine, Ryklon Stevens, Jake Manning, Great Khali, Mama Sasaki, Super Kalo, Cat Power, Les Thatcher, and in parentheses I put that main event wrestling has closed. I believe that's his school has closed due to his retirement. So that probably, I know there's a school section, so I assume that has closed down and not available for students. Stan Hansen, Greg Hamilton, Dewey Donovan, Scott Putski, Vito Tomasali, Sergeant Slaughter, and Rob Black. All right. And then we go to Before the Impact, starting off with VSK defeating Commander. If I remember correctly, VSK likely won with the interference of probably CPA, somebody at least in the learning tree, in their little ongoing program that they have right now. Backstage segment where Larry D and Falaba argue, likely with Caleb with a K in the middle. We trying to remember the week before, Ba lost to He's Mance Warner, um, due to botch interference from Larry D, which is probably where this argument started. And then, like I mentioned before, Caleb with a K trying to reinvent Larry with a D, and Falaba, Larry being down with it, Fala less so. So, probably a further split between the two. We get a promo with Quinn McKay, more so Quinn McKay, but then Rachel Ellering and Roxy, um, trying to get in the, well, I wouldn't say get in the head, but make sure that Quinn McKay will be all right in her match with Killer Kelly later on, that she asked for, worrying that she may be in over her head, but McKay wants to go at it alone, wants to prove herself that she can go toe to toe with someone like Killer Kelly, especially in what would probably be her specialty, a submission match. And then we get a Mance Warner promo. Basically, Mance talking about how he's been on a roll, he's been on a streak, he's had um everyone that's been put in front of him, he's defeated, and Mance is on a roll. So what he's going to do is he's going to enter himself into Feast or Fired. He feels like it's his next step to hopefully grabbing one of those briefcases and getting a future title shot, and getting into the real mix. His promo though is interrupted by Danhausen. Danhausen's like, "Oh, I'm on a winning streak myself," and Mance is like, "You won one match. I've won like 5 or 6. What kind of winning streak is that?" And Danhausen is like, "Oh, well, I too enter myself in the Feast or Fired because I won a briefcase full of monies." And um, Danhausen just being weird and Mance being rough and gruff, and uh, a funny promo for the both of them. And then Quinn McKay defeating Killer Kelly in a submission match. Due to their word, Rachel Ellering and Roxy do not come out, but Madison Rain and Brandy Lauren do. Um, Madison Rain distracts the ref. Brandy Lauren gets up on the apron with a loaded purse. Goes to hit Quinn McKay. Quinn ducks. She hits Killer Kelly, knocking her out. The ref throws them both out. Quinn puts on a submission, but Killer Kelly has been knocked unconscious, so she cannot answer the refs. The the ref declares Killer Kelly has passed out. She cannot answer. Gives the match to Quinn McKay. So Quinn McKay wins, gets her vindication of sorts over Killer Kelly and Madison Rain and Brandy Lauren. And then before the Impact ends with Scott D'Amore arriving to the Impact set. He is talking with Gia Miller. He has Samoa Joe on standby. And of course, Gia Miller wants to get to the bottom of just an explanation of what happened at the end of Impact last week. And Scott D'Amore says he will give that uh, explanation to everyone at the end of Impact in person, but will not do so until he has Impact's entire security staff on board and surrounding him. So we have that to look forward to. Scott D'Amore, uh, hopefully giving us a explanation as to what he's doing here, what Samoa Joe's doing here, why they attacked Josh Alexander at the end of Impact. Yeah. So backstage overall rating of 27, which basically is. I think I didn't have Eric Stevens or Nikki Rocks uh, doing um, didn't have Nikki Rocks or Eric Stevens doing road agent work, so our scores are more average. None of them really dip below. So we got an overall rating of 27. Backstage incident, Rich Swan organized a video game tournament, so that's a net positive for everyone. I've been playing with like the metal feature. Tried to do a basically a light one with meddling between Trey Miguel and Sam Beal, hopefully an attempt to increase Beal's morale a little bit because he's still, I think, either annoyed or irritated. But it had no effect. So that's it for before the impact. Let's go into impact. Starting off impact, if you hear me starting and stopping a lot lately, my cats are kind of running around. Don't want them to get in the wires, but I don't want to lock them out because you'll hear them scratching at the wall or the door. And plus, they had a big day yesterday. They went to the vet, and especially the one that's trying to get in the wires today, had a big ear cleaning. So I'm trying to uh keep her happy. She did not like it last week, but or yesterday. But we start off Impact with Madman Fulton versus Jake Something. We got Madman Fulton accompanied by Ace Austin. Um, I don't know if I had uh Johnny Swinger interfering in this one. I, I did have basically Ace Austin trying to interfere on behalf of Fulton, trying to hit Jake something with probably the cane or something. Madman Fulton, he hit ducks, I cannot talk. Hits Madman Fulton instead. That doesn't directly lead to the finish, but eventually that is enough to put Madman Fulton off his game. Jake something, continuing his role after defeating W. Morrissey. He defeats Madman Fulton, segment rating of 38. And then afterwards, we get Johnny Swinger and Zicky Dice running out and brawling with Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. And basically, like we mentioned last week, they are all in Feast or Fired. So this is basically just a brawl to continue till then. No real resolution found this week, but we will probably have one in Feast or Fired. The ultimate gamble. Segment rating of 25. Storyline advanced but lost heat. I don't remember if it gained heat with the last segment. We come back to um, a promo from the Learning Tree, particularly Brian Myers, congratulating BSK with his win over Commander on Before the Impact, and he mentions his loss last week to Laredo Kid. Somewhat angry, but kind of, says that, he got Laredo Kid got the rub on getting a win over Brian Myers, but that's not going to last. But what they want to do is lay out the challenge, the four of them versus the four of them. The four, Learning Tree, Myers, VSK, CPA, Neighborhood Good versus the four, uh, Team AAA, Laredo Kid, Commander. I have Commander listed there twice for some reason. Gotita de Plata and Astrolux. For them versus the four AAA members. Next week on Impact, the winners getting entered into Feast or Fired. And the way they see it, for them, four briefcases, they're going to go in and sweep them all. And that's when CPA perks up and reminds Myers that one of the briefcases has a pink slip in it. One of them could be fired, and Myers doesn't really care. He just kind of brushes it off with like, whatever, you know. Well, we can, there's four of us, four briefcases. We'll just get them all. We'll sweep the, once we sweep AAA, we'll sweep Feast or Fired and we'll take it all. We'll win it all. But that only gets a segment rating of 18. Then we get a backstage segment where we see the Knockout Tag Team Champions of the Inspiration basically berating Tennille Dashwood. Tennille has not been doing well these last couple weeks. So um like the Inspiration they remember that Tennille joined them to get a knockouts title shot, but like why would she's not worthy. Why what has she done? She's lost, like she lost to Zhao Zia at the pay-per-view and lost likely last week to lost to Ty Valkyrie on her retirement match. So they are just kind of saying like, what are you good for? What can you do for us? What is the point of you being around us anymore? And Tennille has no answer, but what she does is she sees Tasha Steeles and her crew walk by, and she basically deflects onto them, and she's like, well, at least I'm not as big of losers as they are. And immediately Tasha Steeles, Janai Kai, and Savannah Evans perk up and get in their faces, and it's like basically uh calling them out. Immediately um Inspiration tries to run away. Again, a plan of Tennille's that backfired, resulting in an argument between all six ladies. Segment rating of 25. And then we get a match made from last week where the BFFs of Deanna and Chelsea versus Rosemary and Zhao Zia. If Rosemary and Zhao win, they get title shots at Slammiversary. And that's what happens. Um, Deanna kind of leaves Chelsea to leaves her to the wolves, so to speak. With the end sequence, Rosemary goes to miss Chelsea, but she ducks, but she walks right into a kick from Zhao, and then Rosemary pins Chelsea with a red wedding. Zhao seemed off her game, but Rosemary and Zhao showed excellent chemistry teaming together. So maybe we have a team in the future. Um Deanna was head and shoulders above everyone else with a 51. Zhao and Rosemary in the 30s, Chelsea 26. Um but segment rating of 39. So and then afterwards we get them celebrating their win. Rosemary getting a knockouts title shot at Slammiversary against Deanna. Zhao getting a digital media title shot against Chelsea Green, segment rating of 39. And then we get an angle or a promo from PCO. If you remember from last week, the main event was Josh Alexander versus PCO for the Impact title, which did not have a finish due to the events that took place between Josh and Scott D'Amore and Samoa Joe. Basically, this is less a promo and just more a ranting and raving of PCO, angry that he basically came to Impact for violence and for a title and got neither. So that's about as much as you could tell from a PCO promo where he's just ranting and raving and screaming to himself. So, segment rating of 38, which is decent. Was kind of expecting worse, but um, some unresolved anger there. And then we get a music video to promote Samoa Joe. Segment rating of 50. This did what it did, or did what was intended, where I just basically like now that we have Samoa Joe, we're definitely going to use him to get our overall ratings up, hopefully, and our TV ratings, um, and our buy rates and everything. So this was mostly to one, to fill time, two, to get a good rating, and three, for the at-home audience who, for whatever reason, may not be familiar with Samoa Joe. This is kind of, best of Samoa Joe from Impact. It's like, okay, you've seen him in WWE, this is where he came from. So, as good as he may be in WWE, he was a different beast in Impact, and maybe that, that beast has come back to Impact, and we hopefully are going to find out why later tonight. Then we get a promo with the Good Brothers. The Wolves called them out for a challenge tonight. Well, last week for tonight. And this is basically them saying, yes, we are going to, uh, we are going to end this once and for all. I know, we started this with you and you, or with Eddie, and Eddie brought in Davey to bring back the Wolves, and we're going to show you, you that you guys can't hang. We're the best team in Impact. Blah blah blah, all that other stuff. So segment ring of 39, setting up the match for the main event. I believe it probably is the main event for later tonight. We get a tag match. Mike Bailey and Chris Bay versus Trey Miguel and Sam Beal. Mike Bailey and Chris Bay, opponents at Slammiversary, to they will be facing off in a three-way match with Swerve for the X Division title, and this is basically somewhat of a warm-up match with former champ Trey Miguel and his buddy Sam. Unfortunately for Trey and Sam, they do not win, despite Bailey and Bay being future opponents and vying for the X Division title. They somehow also showed excellent chemistry teaming together, so maybe there's a future team there too. So who knows? But in the meantime, unfortunately, Chris Bay pins Sam Beal. Sam Beal was the weakling still, but that's kind of the point here. Sam Beal with a 27, Mike Bailey with a 50, Chris Bay with a 46, Trey Miguel with a 40. So, despite the fact that they are opponents, they seem to work well, seem to be evenly matched, but we will see, how that works out once. I believe Swerve might have been at ringside for this too. So, yeah, Swerve was at ringside. So he's watching this, seeing them, actually work together pretty well. So maybe he's in danger of losing his title to one of them at Slammiversary, but we will find out in a few weeks. Segment rating of 42. We go backstage with Gia Miller. Gia Miller is interviewing Willie Mack. Um, Willie Mack cutting a promo. Probably, I don't think I have him talking. Oh, no, actually, no, I do have him talking about something in particular, because basically, Willie Mack talks about Rich Swann. Talks about, he's like, I don't know why he turned his back on me, but at this point, I don't really care, and I just want to move on. I just want to move on from him. I hopefully want to move back into some sort of title contention. So what I'm gonna do is I'm entering in a Feast or Fired, and I hope Rich Swann has the guts to do the same, because I want to move on. I want to move on to the future. Hopefully, win me a title shot, and maybe we'll run the risk of getting fired, but hopefully, I hope Rich Swann gets fired. Rich eventually interrupts the promo, and Rich like calls his bluff, and he's like, "Oh well, yeah, I'll also enter Feast or Fired, because the way I see it, there's definitely not room for both of us in Impact, and he kind of makes another fat joke at Willie's expense, and they kind of get into a shoving match, which is quickly broken up. But we have two more competitors for Feast or Fired, Willie Mack and Rich Swann, segment rating of 29. All right, we come back to Eric Young and Damian O'Connor. I really need to give these guys a name other than Sanity 3, but uh they are in some dark undisclosed location cutting a promo about last week Joe Doring defeating Damian O'Connor, earning a match against Eric Young at Slammiversary. Uh Eric Young basically says, "Congratulations, you did it. You got what you wanted. You got your stupid match. But are you gonna be able to show? Because I look around, you're not here today. You could have been, but we don't say that because there's reason you're not here, and that's because Big Damian O'Connor, laying you out, flattening you out. Maybe he didn't win the match, but we won the war. You know, if you're not injured, maybe you're hiding in Japan. So I'll be there at Slammiversary. I'll give you stupid little match, but you know, if you decide not to show up again as you are wont to do, I would not be surprised. And if you do show up, I'll be waiting, and so will Damien. Segment rating of 32. We get a somewhat preview of the Lethal Lockdown match where we get Michael Bennett versus Heath. Um, not necessarily saying these are two team captains, but um, we do get Michael Bennett defeating Heath with a pile driver, I guess it's finisher. But the big news is that Morrissey comes out and basically lays out Heath. I think Rhino is also at ringside, lays Rhino out too. Yeah, Rhino's at ringside. But basically, Morrissey comes out, big boots Rhino, big boots Heath, eventually rolls Heath back in the ring, leaving him open for Michael Bennett to take the pin. Segment rating of 41. This is likely Morrissey's answer to Maria Kanellis' invitation last week to join Team Maria for Lethal Lockdown. But segment rating of 41. Is he or is he not? We'll find out. We all, after the match, this is something I've actually been trying to play with, and I finally figured out how to do it. But basically, throughout the last couple weeks of the whole Maria wanting to buy out Gail Kim, or wanting to buy out Gail, wow, wanting to buy out Impact and Gail Kim preventing it. Basically, on commentary, Matt Stryker has definitely taken the side of Maria, saying that Maria could turn Impact around, and her running Impact wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And Ian is like, what is there that needs changing? Impact's fine the way it is. And basically, Matt Stryker slowly turning heel, which is mentioned here. Um, Mostly jealous of Ian taking his spot on commentary, poking his finger or his nose where it's not wanted. Just kind of imagine that has been going on commentary the last few weeks. This is where it blows up, where eventually Matt Stryker gets up, shoves Ian Riccaboni. D'Lo gets in between the two of them and basically has to hold them apart. A slight shoving match. But yeah, we have dissension in the ranks, even among the commentators, as to the future of Impact, whether it should remain the way it is or whether Maria should buy it out. So, segment ring of 35. Glad that did somewhat well because that's something we want to continue with. And then, likely after a commercial break and after the fracas with Ian and Matt Stryker has calmed down, we go back to Team Maria's locker room. The whole team is there now, including W. Morrissey. Morrissey officially making it known that he is joining Team Maria for Lethal Lockdown, and that makes 5. Morrissey, Bennett, Macklin, Raywalt, Black Taurus, not Robert Evans. Evans, did his job, found, someone disgruntled enough to join the rest of this crew to hopefully um hopefully remain once Maria buys out Impact and, stake their claims to their future. So Team Maria has officially coalesced into one. They got all 5 members. Segment rating 27. Meanwhile, backstage, we see Gail Kim, we see Homicide. They're kind of uh I don't have them put here, but they, imagine them also kind of tending to Heath and Rhino after being laid out by Morrissey. And they're just kind of frantic. They only have 3 members of their team, and 2 of them have just gotten laid out. And they got to figure out what to do next. Gail looks around. She sees Jonathan Gresham. Gail is like, I know, I asked you this last week, and I know you're not comfortable, but seriously consider joining our team, joining Impact. I know Impact's not your home, but seriously, it's 3-on-5 right now. We need more people. And Gresham just kind of shaking his head still. Is just like, I can't do it. It's, Impact, Impact's not my home. And eventually he's interrupted by Jordan Grace, who basically looks at her husband somewhat in disgust. Just basically like, Impact might not be your home, but it's mine. So I'm joining. I'm joining. You don't have to join Team Impact. I will. So Gale and Homicide just kind of look at each other like, okay, you're in. So they are up to 4 now. Homicide, Heath, Rhino, and Jordan Grace. Team Gale for Lethal Lockdown, but they still need a 5th. Who will be the 5th? Who will step up? That's what we will have to find out later. Segment rating of 32. And then in our main event, the Good Brothers versus the Wolves. Eddie Edwards defeating Carl Anderson with a Boston Knee Party. The Wolves ending it finally versus the Good Brothers. This is what the Wolves wanted. This is what the Wolves saw as their final obstacle before hopefully becoming tag team champions once again. And the storyline has ended here. The Wolves defeating the Good Brothers. In-ring performances in the 60s for the Good Brothers, 56-47 for Gallows. Gallows is off his game. It's gained heat, but is ending the segment. The teams have great history or chemistry, so finally, you know, something I wanted to originally end. Obviously the Good Brothers tournament was somewhat meant for the Wolves to win, but it ended up, with Davies' injury, we kind of had to call an audible, and it ended up being the Machine Guns. But now the Wolves have, defeated the Good Brothers, and the Wolves are looking forward to meeting the Machine Guns, hopefully in the near future. Segment rating of 53. And after the match, basically, the Wolves celebrate their victory. The Machine Guns, the tag team champions, eventually come out and basically have a stare down. They know a match is inevitable, but when and what, likely, will they face off at Slammiversary? It would definitely be a huge match for Slammiversary, but they just gotta lay it all out there on the line. And um, after the Wolves dispatching the Good Brothers, they can definitely stake their claim. But It just has to happen. And it doesn't happen tonight. Maybe it'll happen next week. We'll find out. But until then, segment rating of 39 for the stare down. And then I'm trying to catch my breath because this is going to be somewhat long-winded. And I'm likely going to forget some things. This is definitely like a big story based segment. But Scott D'Amore and Samoa Joe come out to the ring. They are flanked by every security guard on the Impact security team. They stand in the ring while the security team surrounds the ring. Scott D'Amore, Samoa Joe, neither man, well, obviously not Scott D'Amore, but Samoa Joe not dressed to wrestle, not carrying his titles with him. Scott D'Amore seemingly doing all the talking here. Scott takes the microphone and he addresses the fact that security is surrounding the ring. And while he knows that Josh Alexander may be a longtime friend after what he did last week, he understands his rage. But due to the fact that they are both here on loan from NXT, Scott D'Amore, well, not Scott D'Amore, but the higher ups have instituted a no contact rule for Josh Alexander on either man, really. So, but despite that, Scott still calls out Josh Alexander because he wants him to hear what he has to say man to man and friend to friend. And of course, Josh, the Impact World Champion, comes out understandably pissed off, coming out to listen to what Scott has to say. And basically, Scott talks about how, um, you know, he knows that Josh loves Impact and he's here to carry the banner. And Scott D'Amore definitely understands that. Scott knows what is going on in Josh's head. He knows that he wants to make Impact be the best he can be. And he knows because he's been there doing it. He's been there almost since day one, back in the Asylum days. You know, he came to Impact because he wanted to make Impact big. He wanted it to be the true alternative to the big time, but and he congratulates Impact on making it to 20 years. No one expected to them to make it to 20 years. But, in the back of his mind, Scott knew that, even he didn't expect Impact to make it to 20 years. And, even though we're celebrating, the past and maybe the future of Impact, what does the future of Impact really hold? When Impact's been, bought out by, you know, big company after big company. Hell, we have a match for the control of Impact taking place at Slammiversary. How many big companies out there are willing to buy an underdog company and keep it afloat like Impact? And that's what Josh Alexander is doing with his world title reign. He knows he loves Impact. He loves Impact too. But how long can it stay afloat? How long can Impact last? There's, like you said, there's not going to be, tons of companies with big money willing to bail them out every time something goes wrong. And that's why he went to NXT and took up their booking job. That's why he went, because, as much as I love Impact, I love wrestling and I want to stay in wrestling and I want to, keep working in wrestling. And I know the only way I can do that is go to the security of, up north, even though, well, technically NXT is, you know, next door, really. But he's basically going into the speech is like, I love Impact, but, if I'm going to have a successful career in Impact, or if I'm going to have a successful career in wrestling, I can't just be toiling away in Impact and, what happens if the ship starts to sink again? I can't keep, bailing it out with you guys. I had to go where it's secure. And I know, Samoa Joe, he may be not talking, but Joe, he had that moment where he looked around. He's like, maybe, Impact's not really worth saving anymore. I gotta go where I can wrestle. You know, maybe not his style, but to keep wrestling in general, to make wrestling his career and be the best that he can be, he had to swallow his pride and go to, where the security is. And that's what I'm offering you, Josh. If you can, I know you're angry at me. I know, you know, last week, I came out, I interrupted your match. I even brought your wife into it. And I know, we've been, you know, family, friends, all of us. I brought your wife into it, and I'm sorry for that, but you got to think about her too, because, if you want to keep wrestling, you can't just stay in Impact. You may be the big fish in the small pond here, but if you want to keep wrestling, who knows when this pond's going to dry up. That's what I'm trying to say here. And I can get you into NXT if you got it. The door is open for you. I can make connections. I can talk to the right people and get you in. But you got to make that decision. But until then, the main reason why I'm here, the main reason why Samoa Joe is here is that I probably should have said this at the beginning. Here's where I, likely forget things, and I'm doing this mostly off the top of my head. So I should have mentioned that, the security is there for the no contact clause. Then I should say Samoa Joe is here on behalf of WWE and NXT, and he will appear at Slammiversary. But to do that, to get him to appear and return to Impact and grace him with his presence and return home temporarily, we, along at NXT, along with the Impact Board of Directors, uh, have agreed to give him a title shot. Samoa Joe versus Josh Alexander at Slammiversary for the Impact World title. I should have said that. And then the contract signing will be next week. So we'll set that up. Then take everything I talked about the last 10 minutes or so, put that at the end, and end the show with that. Basically, Scott D'Amore pouring his heart out about how, yeah, Impact is great, but it's not going to last forever. Um, but he can do, he brought Samoa Joe back here. He's getting, a title shot, giving him a title shot at Josh Alexander at Slammiversary, maybe the biggest show in Impact history. A reminder of the 20 years that Impact has been going on. But how much longer can Impact really go on? Really, Josh, you have to face facts. Blah 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 blah, stuff like that. Josh, understandably angry at what happened last week, but also trying to process what Scott D'Amore is saying. Eventually, just walks off, and then they end the show there. So we are technically Scott D'Amore was a face. We are teasing at a heel turn. Samoa Joe is the heel. We're bringing him in. He did not say anything this week. This was all Scott D'Amore and emotion, at least on the side of Josh Alexander. Samoa Joe just basically giving Impact his star rub. But overall, rating of 48. I think that is good. Trying to remember what I want to say it was 48 was last week's. Maybe this one's a little bit bigger, but yeah. Joe's presence definitely helped us. We got a good match in the 50s. Finally ending the Wolves versus Good Brothers. We got some matches in the 40s with Michael Bennett, Heath, and Bailey and Bay versus Trey and Sam, and everything basically kind of baselined somewhat other than the Learning Tree promo. So we are heading into Slammiversary. We have Joe versus Josh Alexander for the Impact World title. We have Rosemary versus Deanna for the Knockouts title. Zhao Za versus Chelsea for the digital media title. Um, we have Joe Doring versus Eric Young. We have the X Division title match, Bailey and Bay and Swerve. We have the Lethal Lockdown match. So far, it's only 5-on-4. We still have to get a fifth for Team Gale and Team Impact. And likely, we're probably going to find out next week what is going on between the Wolves and the Guns. Will the Guns defend the titles against them at Slammiversary? Sorry, this show is probably going to be chopped all to hell. My cats eventually hid from me. So, yeah, come back next time. It'll be the go home show for Slammiversary, and maybe, hopefully, it'll be big. But until then, thanks for watching.